The battlefield was silent to silent. Only the faint crackle of fire and the distant echo of falling metal remained. Smoke rose into the dark sky, hiding the stars that once gave hope to tired soldiers. The war between humans and aliens had burned this world into ash. Among the ruins, a lone human soldier moved carefully. His armor was scratched, his face covered in dirt, and his eyes heavy with exhaustion. He had survived battles that killed many of his friends, but survival had a price. His orders were simple: eliminate every alien survivor. No exceptions, no mercy. But fate had other plans. As he passed the broken walls of an alien structure, he heard something soft, almost like a whisper. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then, he heard it again, a weak cry, almost too small for the ears of a soldier trained for war. He stopped, his heart beating faster. Slowly, he raised his weapon and stepped into the shadows. There, hidden beneath fallen stones, he saw her, a small alien girl, no more than 10 years old. Set trembling, her skin glowed faintly with a pale light, her eyes large and filled with fear. She had wounds across her arms, her clothes torn. She was not a warrior, she was not a threat. She was just a child. The soldier's grip tightened on his weapon. His training screamed at him, destroy the enemy, do not hesitate. But his heart argued back, she is only a child. She is helpless. The girl looked up, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. Those eyes filled with both fear and hope cut deeper than any order ever given to him. She did not beg. She did not speak. She only watched him, waiting to see if he would end her life. His hands trembled. He could hear the voices of his commanders in his head, warning him of betrayal. If anyone found out he spared her, his career would be over. He could be executed for treason. But as he stood there, weapon pointed at her small figure, he felt something he had not felt in years: humanity. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. The girl gasped, her glowing eyes widening. The soldier removed his helmet, showing his tired human face. He spoke softly, his voice rough from dust and war. It's okay, I won't hurt you. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Her trembling eased, though fear still held her body. The soldier reached into his pack and pulled out a water flask. He offered it to her. She hesitated, staring at the strange object, then took it with shaking hands. She drank, spilling a little on her clothes, but her eyes never left his. For the first time in years, the soldier smiled. He knew this was madness. If his own people discovered her, she would be executed. If her people found him, he would be killed instantly. Yet, something in his heart told him this child was different, important. She was not just another alien. She was life, and life deserved a chance. Come on, he whispered, lifting her gently into his arms. She was light, fragile, like holding a piece of glass that could shatter at any moment. She pressed her small hands against his chest, not in fear now, but in trust. Every step he took felt heavier. His mind raced with fear. What if the others see me? What if they know? Yet, with every glance at the girl's tired face resting against his armor, his fear turned into resolve. He moved through the ruins, keeping to the shadows. His fellow soldiers were not far, but he avoided them. The sound of distant shouts reminded him of the danger. If he was caught, there would be no forgiveness. The girl spoke softly, words in a language he could not understand, but her tone was gentle, almost like a song. She looked at him with gratitude, and though he did not know her words, he understood her meaning. She was thanking him. As night fell, he found a small shelter inside the ruins. He laid her down carefully, giving her some of his food. She tasted it cautiously, then smiled a small, fragile smile that melted his heart. For a moment, he forgot the war. For a moment, he was not a soldier, and she was not an alien. They were simply two lives, bound together by chance and choice, but deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The war was not over. His people would search for survivors. Her people might return for vengeance. His decision to save her was not just an act of mercy, it was a risk that could change everything. He sat beside her, weapon ready, watching the stars finally break through the smoke. Somewhere far away, commanders and leaders made decisions, that would decide the fate of billions. But here, in this ruined shelter, one man had made a decision of his own. He had chosen to save one small alien girl, and that single choice would echo across galaxies. The ruins became their secret world. Every night, the soldier returned to the same hidden shelter where the alien girl waited. By day, he fought beside his fellow soldiers, pretending nothing was different. By night, he slipped away, carrying food, water, and warmth to the fragile life he had chosen to protect. At first, there was only silence between them. She spoke in soft alien sounds he could not understand, and he spoke in human words that meant nothing to her. Yet they found other ways to communicate, through gestures, through eyes, through simple trust. One night, as the firelight flickered against the broken stone walls, the girl picked up a small piece of rubble and drew on the ground. Strange, curved lines appeared under her hand, glowing faintly as if her skin carried hidden light. The soldier leaned closer, watching. She pointed to the marks, then to herself. He frowned, then nodded. She was showing him her name, a word unspoken but alive in glowing symbols. The soldier tapped his chest. Daniel. His voice was rough but steady. Then he picked up a stick and wrote his name in the dirt. The girl tilted her head, studying the strange shapes. She touched the letters with small glowing fingers, then tried to copy them. Her attempt was clumsy, but she smiled when Daniel nodded in approval. That smile, small, tired, yet bright, made the endless war feel distant. Each night, their lessons grew. He taught her simple human words: water, food, safe. She repeated them slowly, her alien tongue struggling but determined. In return, she showed him more of her symbols. Some of them looked like stars, some like rivers. He could not read them, but he sensed meaning in their shapes. One evening, when he brought her dried rations, she pushed the food back toward him. Her face was serious. She pressed her hand to her heart, then placed the food in his hand again. Daniel understood she was telling him to eat, to stay strong. Even though she was the one who needed saving, she worried for him. This bond was dangerous. He knew it. If anyone discovered the truth, he would face a firing squad. And yet, as the days turned into weeks, he found himself waiting for the nights when he could see her again. Sometimes when she was tired, she leaned against his shoulder. Sometimes, when fear filled her eyes, he whispered stories from his childhood, simple tales of green fields, of rain falling on a quiet earth. She could not understand the words, but she listened with wide eyes, as if his voice itself was a shield against the darkness outside. But the danger was never far. One night, while Daniel was sneaking back from his shelter, he heard voices. 2 soldiers passed by, their flashlights cutting through the ruins. "Command says some aliens are still out there," one soldier muttered. "Orders are to burn every hole we find." Daniel's heart froze. If they searched his hiding place, she would be discovered. Without hesitation, he led the patrol in another direction. Pretending to be scouting, he lied, saying he had checked the ruins already. The other soldiers grumbled but trusted his word. When they left, Daniel's hands were still shaking. He realized then how much he had risked. His life, his honor, his very soul. He had tied them all to a fragile alien child. The girl, sensing his unease the next night, reached out and placed her hand gently on his chest. Her glowing eyes studied him with silent understanding. She didn't know his words, but she knew his heart. In that simple touch, Daniel felt something stronger than duty, a connection that crossed the boundaries of species. And one evening, as the sky burned red with distant fire, Daniel tried to explain. He drew a circle in the dirt and pointed to himself. Then he drew another circle and pointed to her. Slowly, he joined the 2 circles together. She watched, then nodded. 2 lives, 1 bond. Time was running out. The war would not last forever, and he knew he could not hide her forever. Already, whispers spread in the camp about missing supplies, about soldiers sneaking away at night. Every secret has a price, but Daniel could not stop. Not now. The more he saw her, the more he believed she was not just a lost child. There was something greater, a presence in her glowing eyes, a weight in her small words, as if destiny itself watched over her. Sometimes, when she drew her symbols, They looked like constellations, patterns of stars Daniel had never seen. She pointed to the sky, then back to the drawings, as if telling him, "I come from beyond, from worlds you cannot imagine." He wanted to ask questions, to understand her past, her people. But for now, survival was all that mattered. On their last night together, before everything changed, the girl pressed her forehead against his, a silent gesture, a promise, though no words were spoken. Daniel felt it deep within. She would never forget him. The war outside still roared. The world still burned. But in the ruins, a secret bond had been forged between a human soldier and an alien child. A bond no weapon could destroy. And one day, that bond would return to shake the stars themselves. The war ended not with victory, but with silence. Explosions stopped, weapons fell quiet, and soldiers were ordered to retreat. The battlefield was left in ruins, filled with ash, smoke, and the ghosts of both human and alien lives. For Daniel, the silence was heavier than the noise of battle. It was the silence of choices, of secrets, of guilt. The alien girl was gone. One night, soldiers had swept through the ruins, burning shelters and searching for survivors. Daniel had barely managed to lead her away before the flames consumed their hiding place. At the edge of the battlefield, he had whispered to her to run, pointing toward the dark mountains. She hesitated, her glowing eyes filled with fear and trust all at once. "Go," Daniel whispered again. "Live." She pressed her small hand to his chest one last time before disappearing into the shadows. He never saw her again. Back at camp, Daniel's life changed. His commanders questioned him. They asked why his patrol reports were incomplete, why supplies had gone missing, why his behavior was different. He gave answers, careful and cold, but suspicion lingered. Rumors spread among the soldiers. He's hiding something. He's not loyal. Maybe he's protecting them. Every whisper cut deeper than a blade. Daniel carried his secret like a weight chained to his heart. He had disobeyed orders. He had risked everything to save a single alien child. And though no one could prove it, the doubt was enough. When the war ended and soldiers were sent home, Daniel was not celebrated as a hero. He was quietly dismissed, his record marked with failure and disobedience. No medals, no honors, only silence and shame. He returned to Earth, to a world that had already moved on. People cheered for peace, building monuments to victory, but Daniel could not celebrate. Every time he looked at the monuments, he thought of her, the girl with glowing eyes. He thought of her laughter when she copied his letters in the dirt, of her small smile when she shared food with him. And he thought of the moment he let her go, not knowing if she would survive. The years passed slowly. Daniel lived alone in a small house on the edge of a forgotten town. He worked simple jobs, spoke little, and carried the same secret every day. Sometimes, at night, he would sit by his window and stare at the stars. Somewhere out there, he believed, she was alive. Somewhere, she remembered him. But memory was both gift and curse, often. He dreamed of her face, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying. In his dreams, she called out to him in her language, but he could never understand the words. He always woke with the same ache in his chest, the question that never left him. Did I do the right thing? The world around him forgot the war. People celebrated progress, building new ships, new colonies, new futures. But Daniel was stuck in the past. The price of mercy was heavy. It had cost him his career, his honor, and his place among his people. One evening, sitting in a quiet bar, Daniel overheard two young soldiers talking. They spoke of the war as if it were a story from long ago. Aliens were monsters, one said. Good thing we destroyed them all. Daniel's hands tightened around his glass. His heart pounded with anger, with sorrow, with the truth he could never speak. He wanted to shout, not all of them. One was just a child, but his voice stayed silent. His secret remained his alone. Sometimes, he wondered what would have happened if he had obeyed orders that day. His life would be easier. No shame, no rumors, no exile. But then he remembered her eyes, the way they had looked at him with trust, with hope. He knew then that even if he had to live in silence, even if the world saw him as a failure, he would make the same choice again, because that one act of mercy was the only thing that still made him feel human. But fate was not done with him. On a rainy night, 20 years after the war, Daniel sat in front of his old television, flipping through static-filled channels. The news anchor's voice caught his attention. Breaking report, an alien fleet has entered human space. The bar around him fell silent. People froze, fear spreading across their faces. The screen showed massive ships, glowing with strange energy, hovering at the edge of the solar system. Humanity panicked, fearing invasion. Daniel's heart stopped when the image shifted to the alien leader. It was her. No longer the small girl he remembered, but a radiant woman in flowing robes, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. She stood tall, her presence commanding, her voice strong as she addressed the galaxy. Daniel leaned closer to the screen, breath caught in his chest. It was impossible. 20 years had passed, but he knew those eyes. He had never forgotten them. And now they looked out across the stars not with fear, but with power. The child he had saved had returned, and she was no longer just a survivor. She was a queen. The world had changed in 20 years. Cities stood taller, ships flew faster, and humans believed the war with the aliens was nothing more than history. Children learned of it in schools, soldiers told stories of battles around fires, and governments promised peace would last forever. But peace was fragile. One quiet evening, alarms rang across the earth, radar systems screamed. Giant shapes appeared on scanners, shadows bigger than mountains, moving slowly toward the solar system. Humanity looked to the skies and saw something they had feared for decades, an alien fleet. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever built, smooth as glass, glowing like living creatures. They drifted through space with a grace that felt both beautiful and terrifying. They were not small scouting vessels. They were carriers, warships, and cities floating among the stars. Panic spread. People rushed into shelters. Governments declared emergencies. Military forces prepared weapons, ready to fight once more. News screens everywhere flashed the same words, alien fleet approaching Earth. In a small town, an older man watched the screen from his worn-out chair. Daniel's face was pale, his hands shaking. For everyone else, this was terror. For him, it was something else, something personal. His past had returned, carried on the wings of alien ships. The broadcast changed. A great chamber appeared, filled with alien light and towering figures. At the center stood the leader of the fleet. She wore robes of silver and blue that shimmered like starlight. A crown rested lightly on her head, glowing with the same soft light Daniel remembered from her skin long ago. And then he saw her eyes. They were the same glowing eyes that once stared up at him from the ruins, frightened but full of hope. Now they held no fear. They held power. They held command. Daniel's heart stopped. He whispered aloud, almost in disbelief, "It's her." The child he had saved had become a queen. Her voice filled the chamber, carried through translators into every human language. It was calm, clear, but strong enough to silence nations. "I am Liara, Queen of the Vayari people." The name struck Daniel like thunder. At last, he knew what to call her. She continued, her words echoing across Earth. 20 years ago, in the fire of war, I was spared by a human. When I was weak, when I was alone, he risked everything to protect me. He chose mercy where others chose death. That mercy lives within me still. The humans watching were stunned. Could it be true? A single soldier, forgotten by history, had spared their queen? Daniel closed his eyes, memories flooding back the night she copied his letters. The smile when he gave her food, the touch of her small hand against his chest. Now she stood before the galaxy, a queen speaking of him. But not everyone welcomed her words. In human governments, leaders whispered in fear. This could be a trick. She could be preparing for invasion. Soldiers prepared weapons. Pilots climbed into ships. The old fears burned again. Daniel could feel it, the storm of mistrust. Humans were afraid, and fear made them dangerous. The queen raised her hand, silencing her own people and the galaxy beyond. "I do not come for war," she said. "I come for truth. I come for peace. But know this, my people are strong, and we will not bow. We come as equals, not as enemies." Her words carried both promise and warning. As she spoke, her eyes seemed to search the crowd, the cameras, the endless faces watching across Earth. And for a brief moment, Daniel believed she was searching for him. He sat forward in his chair, his breath shaking. For 20 years, he had lived in silence, forgotten by his own people. Now the most powerful alien in the galaxy spoke his story before all humanity. But with her return came danger. Already, human generals demanded to know the truth. Who was the soldier she spoke of? Did he live? Was he loyal, or had he betrayed humanity by sparing her? Daniel knew his quiet life was over. His choice, once hidden, was now revealed to the entire world. The girl he had saved had returned, not as a child, but as a queen who carried the fate of 2 civilizations. As night fell on Earth, the skies glowed with alien light. Millions watched in awe and fear as the fleet hovered silently above the stars. The war that had ended 20 years ago seemed to breathe again, but this time, the story was different. This time, it was not about destruction. It was about the bond between one man and one alien child, a bond that now held the power to shape peace or ignite a new war. And Daniel, sitting alone in his small house, knew the future of humanity was once again tied to the choice he made long ago. The girl had returned. The queen had spoken. But what would she do next? The great hall of the United Earth Assembly was filled with tension. Leaders, generals, scientists, and millions watching from their homes stared at the giant screens. The alien queen stood at the center of the chamber, tall and radiant, her silver crown glowing softly like a star. Her fleet still hovered above Earth, silent and powerful. Every second of her speech could decide whether there would be peace or war. Daniel sat far away in his small house, but he felt every heartbeat as if he stood there himself. His face was pale, his hands gripping the arm of his chair. He knew somehow, he knew her next words would change everything. The queen's voice echoed through the hall, calm but commanding. Your people once called mine enemies. You burned our worlds, and we struck at yours. But I stand here not to speak of destruction. I stand here because of one human. A single choice 20 years ago shaped who I am today. The assembly fell silent. Whispers froze. Eyes locked on her. She continued, her glowing eyes filled with memory. When I was a child, lost in the fire of war, I should have died. Your orders were clear. No alien must survive. But one soldier disobeyed. One soldier saw me not as an enemy, but as life. He risked everything, his honor, his future, his own people to protect me. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Some leaders exchanged nervous looks. Generals whispered into their earpieces. The idea that a human soldier had spared the alien queen shook the room like an earthquake. The queen lifted her hand, and with a gesture, a hologram appeared, symbols glowing in the air. They were the same curved marks she had once drawn in the dirt, symbols of her childhood. Slowly, they transformed into human letters, and there it was. A name, Daniel. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. His name, spoken not in secret, not in whispers, but across the stars. Before all of humanity and her people, the queen's voice softened. He taught me water. He taught me safe. He gave me food when he had none to spare. He drew his name in the dirt, and I never forgot it. Daniel. Millions of humans watching across Earth turned their heads, asking the same question. Who is Daniel? The assembly buzzed with voices. Some demanded to know where the soldier was. Others questioned if the queen's story was true. But she silenced them with one more sentence. I am alive because of him. I am queen because of him. And today, I return not as your enemy, but as your ally because of one man's mercy. The chamber erupted in noise. Some leaders applauded, moved by her words. Others shouted warnings of manipulation, claiming it was a trick to divide humanity. Generals argued whether to trust her or prepare for war. But Daniel sat frozen in his chair, his eyes filled with tears he had not shed in years. For 2 decades, he had lived in silence, haunted by doubt, burdened by shame. And now, the most powerful queen in the galaxy had spoken his name with honor before the universe. He remembered the whispers of betrayal back in the camp, the punishment, the years of loneliness. All of it was suddenly transformed. His act, once seen as weakness, was now revealed as the seed of peace. Yet, recognition carried danger. Already, human intelligence forces began searching old records. Who was Daniel? Was he still alive? Could he be trusted, or was he a traitor who had spared an alien? The queen, sensing the unrest, raised her voice again. Do not punish him. Do not shame him. What he did in secret, with no hope of reward. He chose mercy not because it was easy, but because it was right. If you fear me, then know this: your own human heart saved me. Daniel is proof that your kind is more than war. Her words struck like lightning. In living rooms, in schools, in command centers across Earth, people sat stunned. Some wept, some cheered, some doubted, but none could ignore her. Daniel leaned back in his chair, tears rolling freely now. For years, he had asked himself if saving her was a mistake. And now, in this moment, he had his answer. It had not been a mistake. It had been destiny. Still, fear lingered. The alien council standing behind the Queen looked displeased. Some of her own people wanted revenge for the old war. Human generals clenched their jaws, unwilling to lower their weapons. Recognition was powerful, but it was also dangerous. The Queen stood firm, her crown shining brighter. I will not forget Daniel, and I will not allow his choice to be erased. If one man's mercy could end a war for me, then perhaps one alliance can end the war for us all. The chamber fell silent again. For the first time in decades, there was a sliver of hope, a chance that peace between humans and aliens was possible. But peace was fragile, and in the shadows of both civilizations, enemies still whispered of betrayal, of fear, of war. Daniel turned off the television and sat quietly in the dark. His name was no longer hidden. His past had been revealed, and though the world now knew of his choice, he did not know what would come next. The Queen remembered him. The galaxy knew him, and his life would never be the same again. The chamber of the alien council glowed with shifting light, its walls alive with energy drawn from the stars. At the center, Queen Liara stood tall, her crown shining like a flame against the darkness. Her voice still echoed in human ears, but now she faced her greatest trial not against humans, but against her own people. The council members surrounded her in a circle, their robes heavy with authority, their faces carved with anger. Some had lost families in the war with humans. Others carried scars from battles fought long ago. To them, Earth was not a place for peace, it was a wound that had never healed. One elder slammed his staff against the floor, the sound like thunder. Your Majesty, you speak of mercy, but mercy for the humans is betrayal of your own blood. They killed our people, burned our worlds. Shall we now stand before them as friends? The chamber erupted with agreement. Voices rose, sharp and angry. They must pay, they must bow, they must bleed as we bled. Liara raised her hand. The chamber fell into silence, but the fire in their eyes remained. She looked at them, her gaze calm but unshaken. 20 years ago, I was a child, helpless in the ruins of war. A human soldier chose to save me when he had every reason to kill. That act was not weakness, it was strength, but the council resisted. Another voice spoke, colder this time. Strength is not found in mercy. Strength is found in conquest. If we spare the humans now, they will rise again, stronger, and they will destroy us in time. The Queen's heart trembled, but her voice did not. No, if one human heart chose compassion, then others can too. If we answer hate with hate, the circle will never end. Meanwhile, on Earth, generals prepared fleets for battle. Weapons charged, missiles armed, soldiers stood ready. Screens flickered with fear. Humanity waited for the Queen's next words, unsure if they would be spared or doomed. Daniel, watching from his quiet home, felt the weight of it all. His choice long ago had placed her here, standing between peace and destruction. But he knew her. He had seen her eyes when she was just a child. He believed she would not fail. Back in the council chamber, pressure mounted. The elders' voices rose again. If you choose peace, your Majesty, you dishonor the dead. If you refuse war, your crown will be questioned. If you bow to them, you are no queen at all. Their words cut like blades. Liara's people wanted vengeance. Her throne trembled under the weight of tradition and rage. Yet, she remembered the soldier who had risked his life for her. His tired eyes, his trembling hands, his voice whispering safe. She stood straighter, her crown glowing brighter, her voice firm enough to silence the storm. My crown does not rest on hatred. My people will not be slaves to anger. Yes, we lost much. Yes, the humans hurt us. But if I destroy them, then I destroy the gift that saved me. I will not become the monster I was spared from becoming." The chamber shook with protest, but Liara's command cut through. "I choose peace." Her words traveled across the stars. To humans, they fell like rain on dry soil, unexpected, life-giving, but fragile. To her people, they struck like a hammer, shattering the dream of vengeance, but forging a new path. On Earth, generals froze. Some lowered their weapons in disbelief. Crowds gathered in streets, cheering and crying. For the first time in history, humanity heard an alien ruler speak not of war, but of alliance. But not all were convinced. In shadows, both human and alien voices whispered of betrayal, of weakness, of plots yet unseen. Peace was declared, but mistrust remained sharp like a blade waiting to be drawn. In her private chamber later, Liara stood alone, staring out at the endless stars. Her reflection shone faintly in the glass. She remembered Daniel not as the galaxy now spoke of him, not as the soldier who changed history, but as the weary man who had once offered her water in the ruins. Her heart whispered the same words she had spoken before her people. "I choose peace on Earth." Daniel sat silently, listening to the cheers outside. He knew peace was fragile. He knew many hated her decision. But in his heart, he felt pride not for himself, but for her. The child he had saved had grown into a queen brave enough to choose mercy. Even when the world demanded blood, the choice of the queen would echo across generations. It would not end all wars. It would not erase all hatred. But it planted a seed, one that could grow into something stronger than conquest. And though enemies on both sides still whispered in the dark, one truth had been spoken across the stars. The future of two civilizations now rested not on weapons, but on mercy. The days after the Queen's choice were unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Human cities, once filled with fear, now buzzed with awe and disbelief. News screens repeated her words, "I choose peace." Across the stars, debates raged. Some called it weakness. Others called it the birth of a new age. But in one quiet town, far from governments and war councils, a single man lived in silence. Daniel. For weeks, he remained hidden, avoiding the attention his name had drawn. Journalists knocked on his door. Officials demanded interviews. Soldiers wanted answers. But Daniel refused them all. He was not a hero. He was just a man who had once chosen mercy. Then, one night, a ship unlike any he had ever seen descended from the sky. Smooth and bright, glowing like a star, it landed outside his home. The ground trembled softly as its doors opened. From the light stepped the Queen, Liara. She wore no crown now, only a simple cloak. Her glowing eyes softened when they found him. For a moment, time folded, and Daniel saw her not as a queen, but as the small child who once trembled in the ruins. They stood in silence, the years between them heavy yet fragile. Then she stepped forward, lowering her head. "Daniel," she said, her voice carrying both strength and tenderness. "Guardian of my destiny." Daniel's breath caught. He had imagined this moment for 20 years, but no dream could capture the reality. His voice shook. You remember?" Liara smiled faintly. "I never forgot." She lifted her hand, showing him something small. A simple piece of stone, etched with human letters, clumsy. Broken letters she had once scratched into the dirt. His name, she had carried it with her all these years. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. The world had called him a traitor, punished him, forgotten him. But she had remembered. She had carried his name across the stars, all the way to a throne. They spoke little that night. Words were not needed. She told him of her people, of the long years of exile, of how his act of mercy became the fire that guided her rise. He listened, silent, humbled. He told her nothing of his suffering, his loneliness. She already knew. The next day, she invited him aboard her flagship. Humanity watched in awe as an old, weathered soldier walked beside the alien queen, treated not as prisoner or traitor, but as honored guest. For the first time, the two civilizations stood side by side, not in battle, but in respect. In the great hall of her palace among the stars, Liara did what no queen had ever done. She knelt before Daniel. Gasps filled the chamber as alien nobles and human envoys alike watched. Her voice carried across the hall. "This is the man who saved me." This is the human who chose mercy over death. Without him, there would be no queen, no peace, no future. Today, I bow not as ruler to subject, but as life to its savior." Daniel's heart trembled. He reached forward and lifted her gently. "No," he whispered. "You saved yourself. I only gave you a chance." But her people heard. Humanity heard. And from that day forward, his name was no longer buried in silence. Daniel never sought fame. He did not desire power. But his story spread, told in schools, in songs, in both human and alien tongues. Children grew up hearing of the soldier who spared a child, of the bond that became the bridge between two civilizations. Years passed. The alliance between humans and the Veari grew stronger. Trade ships crossed the stars. Soldiers trained side by side. Where once there had been ruins, now there were cities of peace. Daniel lived quietly, never wearing medals, never giving speeches. But sometimes when the stars shone bright, he sat with Liara in her palace gardens, remembering the ruins where it all began. They would laugh softly at the memory of clumsy letters written in dirt, of food shared under broken walls. And though the galaxy called her queen and called him hero, to each other they remained only what they had always been, two lives connected by a single choice. The legacy of that choice spread further than either of them could imagine. It lived not in crowns or thrones, but in the hearts of those who heard the story. A story simple, yet eternal, that mercy can break the chains of hate, that kindness can outlive war, that one act, one risk, can change the universe. And so it was written in history. Human risked all to save alien girl. 20 years later, she returned as queen of a civilization. But for Daniel, it was never about history. It was never about glory. It was only about a girl, alone in the ruins, who needed someone to believe in her. That was his legacy, and hers was a galaxy forever changed.